This is the footwell, and it goes up into the seat pad on the car I'm working on. This needs to transition into the transmission tunnel. So where I'm going to start is I domed this piece into Pullmax. My technique wasn't great, so I'm not going to show that part of the video. There is better explanations and everything out on the web and in Pullmax manuals for how to do a doming setup. We've domed this piece, and then we took a laser and laid out 90 degrees because the laser is going to project it on there better than we could take a square and square it up. I've also added 1 inch to have material for the transitions and a little bit of adjustment. So now we're going to cut this out and make it match up to here, and we'll go from there. Here we are. I have one cut out, and I did shrink it just a little bit, and I did change its form just a little bit, but it transitions in there really nice and gives us that 90-degree sweep that we need. So the next thing to do, this had too much material into it. It was still a little bit rounded, so I set up the laser at the proper height for the transition, and I trimmed it. So now when it's in place, that transition line is nice and straight. What this allows me to do is I now know from this perspective what radius I need. So I can take this known, I know where the backside where this flange goes, and I know what part of this needs to be flat. So I can, from a side view, I can measure back from this point to where the radius starts, and then I know how much material it takes to make that radius down into there, and I can lay out my next piece, which we'll be doing a lot of stretching in order to get it down there. Here's a side view drawing of it. I know there's 4.5 inches of material up to the transition line. So what I've done is this straight line here represents that 4.5 inches of material. This vertical shows from the transition line where it is in 2 dimensions. So what I need to do now is I know what this radius is on this plane. So I'm going to add this distance to that radius. That'll give me my radius on the back side of the sweep. Then I need to take the 4.5 inches away from that radius to get the inside radius of the blank. I'll lay it out and I'll show you for better reference. Here we are at my blank. I have added 1 inch and 1 inch. That way I have some excess material for the transitioning in. It's always easier to trim than it is to add. I came out my 6 inches and added in the difference from the transition line to the beginning of the radius. That gave me 9 7/8. And I took a set of dividers and I put that line in there, and that's going to be the beginning of my transition. I'm going to do no work in here because all this is supposed to lay flat. I then took and subtracted my 4.5 inches for material. It came into here. I added another inch. That way I have some for the transition and some to trim. Made that radius. This will be where I cut the blank, and I will begin stretching everything in between here and here to create our part. I'm not going to do anything here. This will all be just a change in form. This will just be a change in form. That should remain flat, and only this needs to be stretched to create the shape that we're going to do. So let me cut this out and I'll show you the setup we're going to use. Here we are laid out. These are reference lines so that I try to do it evenly. There will be nothing happening here or back here or here. The only place that we need to work is here. Now I need to stretch this circumference here smaller than this circumference here. So in order to make this point come down and back to here, I need to increase this circumference. I need to increase the amount of area I have here. I hope that's a kind of a hard concept to get, but hopefully you'll see it in practice and understand it. But there's not much stretch that needs to happen here and a bunch that needs to happen here. So I'm going to come in, I'm going to work up to this point, and then I'm just going to slowly work it back, doing more work as I go. And we're going to do that with, I'm going to start with, I call them hot dog dies in the Pullmax. I'll try to set up so that I can film and show you as I go. Here we are. This is what I call the hot dog dolly, or hot dog dies. This got a lot of mass to it, and as it comes down and it strikes onto this, it stretches. It's a linear stretch because when it stretches, it moves material this way and moves material that way. Only in those two directions. And that's what we need. We need a linear stretch with this. Here's a side profile. I could have probably made these with a little more arc this way, but they'll work. You'll see. And I'll get you all set up and we'll film it. See, it's kind of changed the form of the whole part. What we'll do is we'll go over to the dolly and we'll readjust that form, and you'll see it'll pop into a different shape or a different form. Here we are. You can see how the shape has changed and how the form has changed. So what we're going to do is we're going to come over here to the post dolly, and I'm going to push down on these, and I'm going to invert this. You can see now how we're going back to flat with this, but we've started to create that curve. So a little bit more work on it, and it should be about right. I'm going to maybe run it in an English wheel just to clean it up a little bit and get this back to flat, and then I'm going to check this radius and see if we were right. We may have to make another adjustment, but I want to get all my form correct now before I go any further. Shape will always take precedence over form. So here we are. We're close. It has a little bit that I had to flex it in order to keep the panel back to being flat where it needs to be. But our sweep is very close. So it only needs a little bit more stretch to get it right. I'm probably going to try to do some in the English wheel. Really lightly, I'll wheel it this way just to get that form right. And then I'll add a little bit of tension when I wheel it, and I'll wheel it this way. That'll stretch this a little bit more. There is another stretch that I could do in the Pull Max, but I want to keep this relatively in form now when I go to finish it out. But it's getting close. And you can see how we've taken that arc and created that radius without having to do anything to the back side of this panel. And once we have this in the correct shape, that form will keep this flat and give this our 6-inch radius that we need. And that will allow us to bring this piece in to create that transition that we need. So, do a little bit more work and we'll do another video. So, usually when you see this linear stretch die, I am using this lower and using it on like flanges and stuff. What I did is we have this one that's made. It has relief into it to allow us to keep a panel more in form and be able to stretch it a little bit. So we're going to use this one. As I set the tension, this thing only strikes so far down and with so much pressure. So to slowly bring it in with some tension in order to get the right shape. So we got to go kind of slow and take our time. And we're going to compare it to sweeps and go from there. Gotten it fairly close. I'm going to go run it through the English wheel and we'll start straightening it up from there. But I think we're close enough to be able to start correcting it now. Here we are. You can see that we're really close. We've gotten really close on our 6 inches to it. Still needs a little bit of tweaking. I think most of that might be just a change in form that it needs. And then we have this. Now we need to start transitioning and blending these two together. And that's going to create that nice S-sweep look that we want when we transition around this floorboard. We still have an extra inch of material in here, so we got to figure out where that cut is, but I'm going to leave it here for now. I hope you've seen how shape takes precedence over form, especially when we were doing that one stretch and it looked like I was making some weird funnel. And then when I brought it over here, it popped into a different form, but that shape had locked it in. And that's it, linear stretch. It was all done with linear stretch. And there are dollies in the book, Any Impossibility in Metal Shaping, that show you dollies that can help with linear stretch. We're going to leave it there for now. I hope that it helps. Thank you.